Paur, senior writer for RealTime Fantasy Sports, and welcome to another edition of the RealTime Fantasy Sports Show. On today's show, I'm going to give you 5 takeaways from Week 15 of the fantasy football season. There were a lot of high-scoring games this week, made for some big-time fantasy performances across the board, a lot of high-scoring fantasy games. Hopefully you came out on top in Week 15 and advanced to all of your league championships. There's still one more game to be played tonight, Pittsburgh and Cincinnati. Doesn't look to be too good of a game, with some positive vibes going for Pittsburgh here, though, because they have a good matchup and could produce some big points on that side of the ball offensively. All right, with that said, here are my 5 takeaways for Week 15. My first takeaway, Ryan Tannehill is an elite fantasy quarterback. I know last year there were some questions about him after his strong finish. Can he keep it up? Well, he's more than kept it up, in my opinion. He continues to play at a very high level. He scored 5 touchdowns in this game, 21 of 27 for 273 yards and 3 touchdowns without a turnover. Also ran for 2 scores. He has 30-plus fantasy points 2 of his last 3 games. He has 35 total touchdowns to just 5 interceptions this season. Tannehill is the real deal. I really think he's a top 10 fantasy quarterback, and he could be for a lot of years to come in this offense. My next takeaway is David Montgomery has finally arrived. Yes, thank God Montgomery's finally arrived. He had a slow start to the year, but man, he's finishing with a flurry. He's going to carry a lot of fantasy teams to the championships. He has 100-yard games, 3 of 4, 24-plus fantasy points, all 4 games. He ran for season-high yards this week, 32 carries, 146 yards. He's showing you why so many teams used a high draft pick on him. Hopefully, this is a sign of things to come for Montgomery going forward in this Bears offense. My next takeaway is some top quarterbacks are nearing the end. I hate to say this, but some players that have been very good in years past, I think they're about done. Drew Brees, he had an awful start to yesterday's game. Sure, he heated up in the end, but still, he really struggled for his standards. He's just not making many big plays down the field. He's not having that accuracy. He's lacking arm strength. Unfortunately, I think he's about done. Hopefully, he has a good finish to this season, can have a good playoff run as well. And they definitely have the team that could do that. So hopefully, Brees can go out on top. But as for fantasy standards, I don't think he's very good anymore. Cam Newton as well. Man, his accuracy down the field is just not good. I know that team in New England lacks a ton of playmakers offensively, especially at receiver. They don't have a tight end that catches the ball well at all. So he lacks playmakers. But even with that said, much like Brees, Newton just doesn't have good accuracy down the field, lacks arm strength. It actually looks painful when Newton throws the ball to me when he's trying to push the ball down the field. He still makes plays with his legs, though, and he's very competitive. So you have to love that about Newton. But as far as throwing the ball, man, it's a huge concern for me the rest of the way because of all the arm troubles he has had throughout his career. And lastly, I know he hasn't played yet, but Ben Roethlisberger. He has interceptions 4 straight games. That's before tonight's game. And he's averaging just 6.3 yards per completion, which is a career low by a lot for Big Ben. He is not making as many plays down the field. Another quarterback that seemed to lack a little of the arm strength is from past seasons, and I think that's a concern for Roethlisberger. He announced today he would like to play another season as well. So I just don't know what that's going to be like for Big Ben going forward. I'm worried about him. I just don't think he's same quarterback as in years past. You hate to see these top players not play up to their level from earlier in the career, but it happens. And I think all 3 of these guys have big red flags for them going forward in their careers. My last takeaway from my next takeaway, not my last one. I still have 2 more. Jalen Hurts continues to impress. Last week was his first start and he looked good. You didn't want to get too high on him, but man, he looked great this past game. It was more impressive. He had 41.2 fantasy points. He was 24 of 44 throwing the ball for 338 yards and 3 touchdowns without an interception. He looks like a keeper and a fantasy star in the making. You want to see him make plays throwing the ball, not just running them. And he sure made plays throwing the ball this week. And he's doing this again with an Eagles receiving core that's not the best. So if they add more pieces around Hurts, I think he really could be a good one. He's really impressed me these first 2 starts in his NFL career. And now for my last takeaway. Logan Thomas is a star in the making, a tight end. First off, you have to remember this guy is a converted quarterback. He has not been playing tight end very long. He's just coming into his own at the position. He had 13 catches for 101 yards on 15 targets this week. He has double-digit fantasy points 5 of 6 games. He's a huge target with speed. He can make plays after the catch. I don't think this finish to a season's a fluke at all. I think he's just going to get better, and he can be a legit number one tight end for fantasy teams for years to come. Okay, those are 5 fantasy takeaways from week 15 of the fantasy football season. Again, I hope all of you had a lot of success this week in those high scoring fantasy games and you're advancing to your championships. And enjoy the game tonight as well. This has been Jeff Paur for RealTime Fantasy Sports. Have a great day.